Hello, folks, and thank you guys for checking out our annual meeting this year via PowerPoint. My name is Dana Boyle, and I'm president of the Northern Neck Vegetable Growers Association, and I welcome you. We would love to be able to be with you all this year in person to fellowship and have lunch together and all that fun stuff. But since that could not happen, I will instead take this time to thank our extension agents, Stephanie and Trent, for putting together this information pack program. For those of you joining us that are not members of the Northern Neck Vegetable Growers Association, please consider contacting me or one of our members or one of our extension agents to find out more about our educational programs, our educational trips, our scholarship, and more. We'd love to share more information with you about our fun association.
Hello, this is Tom Kuhar, entomologist at Virginia Tech, and this talk will focus on insect control in sweetcorn. Sweetcorn in Virginia can be attacked by a handful of different pests, including the European corn borer, which is shown in the top left, occasionally the fall armyworm, which is shown on the right, sap beetles, which is down in the left corner, including both the adult sap beetle and then the tiny larvae, which will occur from the eggs that are deposited. And then also stink bugs, which are found in the right, which are piercing sucking insects, which can feed right through the husk and damage the kernels, as you can see on the right. Although all of these insects can show up and are occasionally pests, there is no doubt what the number one pest of sweetcorn is in Virginia, and that is the corn earworm. It is quite evident that you cannot grow sweetcorn in Virginia without managing this pest if you want marketable ears. The corn earworm, some can overwinter in Virginia, but we also get populations from the south, which can move in sometime during the month of July. So we can get corn earworms from anywhere, including located that overwintered right in the same field that you grew your sweetcorn. The moths will feed on nectar, and they're strongly attracted to silking sweetcorn when it has its fresh silks, and they'll deposit that single egg, which can hatch in a day or two, and then that tiny larvae can make its way in the ear where it's protected. That's why corn earworm can be tremendously hard to control. That egg can hatch, and that larval stage can be protected within a couple days without having predators eat it or insecticides be able to contact it. One popular control tactic for corn earworm is the use of BT or transgenic sweetcorn. And this began in the mid-1990s when the first BT transgenic sweetcorn came out. And today there are several hybrids that are commercially available, produced from either Syngenta seeds or Seminis, which is a branch of the Monsanto company, Monsanto and Bayer. But these two companies have primarily produced a lot of the commercial BT sweetcorn that's available. And it has gotten a little bit confusing. Not all BT sweetcorn is the same. There are different genes that code for different toxic proteins that are produced in these different varieties. And it's really important to know which BT gene you're getting, because there are, as we'll show you in the next couple of slides, huge differences in the efficacy that you get from the BT corn. So this slide shows the data that are actually published in the paper that you see at the bottom. This was a recent publication of multiple authors across the northeastern and central U.S., and including some from Virginia, including myself, who basically ran trials for 3 years where we evaluated all the BT genes that are found in sweetcorn in the different varieties. And we all ran the same small plot trials and basically evaluated that sweetcorn without insecticide sprays and assessed how much damage had occurred. And basically what this is showing you is this is the percent reduction in ear damage that you will get from these different commercially available BT corn, and including the first one, which was the attribute line. And you basically see you're only reducing damage about 7%. So you might as well just plant non-BT corn if you were going to use any of those BT sweet corns. The next were the Performance series, which came out in the 2000s, and that combined two different cry proteins that were expressed both in the green tissue as well as in the silk tissue. And these were produced by Seminis. And today, these varieties are giving you about 16% reduction in ear damage. So really, you're not getting a heck of a lot from either one of these types of BT sweet corns. These are the ones that are typically a little bit cheaper than the latter that we're going to mention here, which are the Attribute 2 or the Attribute Plus. And this is a Syngenta produced BT sweet corn varieties, and they have the VIP gene, which is much different than the cry proteins. Again, this is a BT produced gene, but it's one that is actually working. As you see, we get greater than 99% reduction in ear damage from planting any of the BT sweet corn that has Attribute 2 or Attribute Plus. And these are data across multiple trials, and basically every trial pretty much had the same data. So those were data across the US, but just to show you that what we're getting in Virginia pretty much mirrors that. These are the trials from our 4 Virginia locations, which were Abingdon, Blacksburg, Painter on the Eastern Shore, and then Suffolk at the Tidewater AREC. And you see across those 4 locations, these are the 5 sweet corn varieties that we evaluated, including 2 of them are non-BTs, which are Obsession 1 and Providence. And then you see the Obsession 2 and then the BC 0805, which had the original Cry 1AB. And they're all pretty much the same percent ears damaged by corn earworm, no matter which one of those you planted. And the only one that really had no damage was Remedy, which had the VIP gene in it. And those data were similar across all 4 of our Virginia locations. That was in 2019. And we ran the same exact varieties again in 2021. And you basically see that we're getting the same results, which is that all of the cry proteins and the non-BTs were getting heavy damage, and the only one that still is having virtually no damaged ears is the Remedy. So pretty clear data from Virginia and across the US that the only BTs that are working still are the ones that have the VIP gene in them. So be careful which BT, or at least understand which BT sweet corn seed that you're buying and what it's going to give you as far as control. I would like to mention that although you're not getting a complete control or even really effective control with the cry protein BT sweet corn, I will say that those worms are typically smaller that are in those BT corns with the cry protein. They take a lot longer after they've hatched to make their way into that ear if they've ingested a little bit of that cry protein. So they're kind of a sick, woozy sweet corn larva that can still do a little bit of damage and still can end up in the ear, and that's why we get not effective control with them anymore. But the one thing is those corn earworm larvae are a lot easier targets for insecticides, and also because they take longer, they will tend to die from other things like predators and things like that. So a good combination may be buying that cry protein BT sweet corn, and then you may be able to get by with fewer insecticide sprays, and that combo could be a good 1-2 punch to give you real effective control, and that's what the research has shown. So speaking of insecticide control, so whether you're going to have this with BT corn or whether you're going to just basically go non-BT and rely on sprays, the one thing that is important is that targeting that ear zone where the silks are early on, where the tassels are, and making sure that you get very good coverage in that area has been shown to just provide a heck of a lot more efficacy than when you come with maybe an aerial application or maybe a air blast sprayer, and some of that middle corn you can't reach as well, and because you don't get as good a coverage, you don't get as good a control. That's kind of the reasons why you get some control failures. It's not always resistance to the insecticide, but it's the fact that you didn't come on a close enough interval, because when it's warm you will get eggs hatching and that larvae can crawl right in there, and you may have missed it if you were waiting 4 or 5 days between sprays. Also keep in mind when you spray during silking and the silks are continuing to grow over almost a 4 to 6 day span, any silks that were unemerged when you sprayed are not going to be covered. So it's possible a moth could come in, lay its eggs on unprotected silks that grew after you sprayed. That egg hatches and that larvae gets in. So these are the reasons for some of the control failures that we see when growers think they're doing a lot of spraying. So just some things to keep in mind. By the way, the best way to apply insecticides on sweet corn is if you could have these drop nozzles and somehow go over top with a high boy type sprayer and have that just directed right at the ear. Those seem to work the best. So regarding chemicals, pyrethroids for about 3 decades now have been a huge tool of choice for growers, particularly with sweet corn, because you're putting on, sometimes 6, 7, 8 sprays, and you need something that's relatively cheap and relatively effective, and pyrethroids have served that role for a long time. And fortunately for growers, there are a lot of options, a lot of different types of pyrethroids, most of which have gone generic, which means you can find them with all kinds of names. These are only a snippet of the commercially available pyrethroids out there. There's a lot of different names, but these are ones that have most of the active ingredients and probably a few that you probably recognize as a grower. So these are the pyrethroid insecticides. They are nerve poisons. They are broad spectrum in their activity. They kill a heck of a lot of different insects, and they have been used quite extensively in sweet corn, and for many, many years have gotten the job done extremely well. But I've showed this slide a lot. This is one that came from Ames Herbert originally, and now Sally Taylor at the Tidewater AREC, and it basically shows that in 2008 we used to monitor for moth survival in cypermethrin treated vials, and this was basically an indication if that moth survived that insecticide coated glass vial, then it was an indication that you may have some resistance genes out there, because it should kill every moth that's put in there for 24 hours. And you should see it in 2008, all of a sudden you had about 20% of those moths surviving, and that has not waned, and if anything it's gotten a little bit higher over the years, and that is that we have resistance genes to pyrethroids in our corn earworm populations now. So that basically brought up a trial that we did in 2020, and what we wanted to look at, we know we have resistance to pyrethroids that show up in our corn earworm. There's no doubt about that. We have data, strong data showing that. But we've also heard some things from growers that one pyrethroid actually might be working better than others. They get good control with some of them, but they don't with others, and things like that. This is not only Virginia growers, it's the rest of the Delmarva. Been hearing similar things in Delaware. So we actually wanted to see how these different pyrethroids performed head to head, and if this resistance or problem with pyrethroids kind of is the same across the different pyrethroids, or whether we may have some that are actually still working pretty well. So what we did is ran this trial. These are some of the most popular pyrethroids used by vegetable growers in Virginia, and all of them are pyrethroids except for the last one, which is Besiege, which has a pyrethroid in it, lambda cyhalothrin, but also has the diamide, the same diamide that's in Coragen. So this is kind of a combination product as a positive check, and then we have the untreated check, and then we have all these different pyrethroids. So, and the labeled rates are the high rates. And we ran this trial at 2 locations in Virginia, Painter on the eastern shore and then Whitethorn in the mountains of Virginia. And we ran it at the same time, and we put 7 sprays out. So basically three applications a week. And these are the results that we got. So this is Whitethorn near Blacksburg, Virginia. And really what this showed is we got really good control. This is % clean airs, so absolutely no damage at all. We got really, really good looking ears with everything that we sprayed. Every one of those pyrethroids, they all worked really well, and they worked as well as Besiege, which is kind of your Cadillac insecticide right now that has the diamide as well. So that was the results we got in Whitethorn. So what this indicated is if you're a grower in the Blacksburg area, pyrethroids would work just fine for you and would have been a really good option. But running the same trial on the Eastern Shore, so these are data from Painter, the same time in the month of August 2020, much different results. You see all of these pyrethroids from Warrior down to Asana, just not only giving you about 50% or less control against corn earworm, compared with Besiege, which has the diamide insecticide, basically giving you almost 90% control. So what this indicates is if you were a sweet corn grower on the eastern shore of Virginia, that your pyrethroids were probably not going to be a really good option, and that you needed something like Besiege because of the resistance to insecticides that corn earworm is showing there. So in summary, with these 2 different locations, what we have is that it depends on your location of whether the pyrethroids are going to work or not. And what we don't know, and what growers don't know, is what's happening on their farm locally. So the possibility may be there that you have insecticide resistance. So we just went over maybe some reasons why you might reconsider going with straight pyrethroids, and resistance being the big one there. But some other things to keep in mind are the non-target impacts from not only pyrethroids, but some other insecticides that are broad spectrum, like lanate, which is a carbamate. And that is that these insecticides kill more than just corn earworms. They're going to kill a lot of the beneficial insects that can be found in a sweet corn field, things from the predators like lady beetles and the tiny minute pyropugs that'll eat the corn earworm larvae and eggs, to things like honeybees, which will come and collect pollen when the pollen is shedding from the sweet corn. So these are very, very susceptible to pyrethroids. They're quite toxic to these organisms. One thing that we've seen in Virginia, I've seen this quite often in the Shenandoah Valley, or at least I've heard about it, and that is that corn leaf aphid outbreaks can occur when you spray pyrethroids multiple times. And the corn leaf aphid is resistant to pyrethroids, but all the predators that eat and the parasitoids that will parasitize aphids, these 2 natural enemy groups, are basically wiped out by the pyrethroid sprays, and the aphids will explode on you like we see with a lot of other aphids on vegetables. What this results in is ears that may not be marketable. Basically got aphids all over them, and the honeydew that they produce dripping on the husks, and just something that doesn't make that ear marketable anymore. So definitely something to watch out for. And again, these are, I could almost predict, if you tell me that you have corn leaf aphid problems in your sweet corn, I could turn around and say, how many pyrethroids are you spraying? Because that's usually the trigger for that happening. So basically, what can you do then? What can you spray if you're not going to use pyrethroids? There are other options, and I know a lot of growers have already adopted these. And the 2 main alternatives to pyrethroids that you're going to use for corn earworm are going to be your spinosins, which include products like Blackhawk or Radiant, and Trust if you're an organic grower. And we'll talk about those later, but those are all spinosins. And the other group of insecticides are the diamides. and Coragen being one of the most popular of the diamides. I will like to maybe draw your attention to a new insecticide, Vanacore. You've probably not heard of that one. It's because it just came out. And it is basically the same active ingredient that's in Coragen. It's more concentrated, and from what I've heard, the insecticide is going to be less expensive because it's a higher concentration. So less expensive per acre per application. And so that's good news for the grower, that you not only have Coragen, but you've got another product out there that can basically do the same thing, and hopefully for a cheaper price. And then there's also mixtures that have those same diamides that we're talking about in Coragen and Vanacore, plus they have a pyrethroid. So it's kind of you've got two different mode of actions there. And Besiege, we already mentioned it, kind of your Cadillac right now for corn earworm control. I will mention that Elevest is a new product, just like Vanacore, that has come out that kind of can battle against Besiege. It has the diamide, and instead of Lambda-cyhalothrin, which is in Besiege, it has the pyrethroid bifenthrin. So these are, again, new products that sweet corn growers have now that you may not have heard of. So check into those, ask your distributors about them, and then hopefully all this means is that you can maybe get some these insecticides a little bit cheaper. So the other thing I'd like to mention before we leave some insecticide control with against corn earworm is that if you're selecting insecticides now and you're going to rotate chemistries, you're going to maybe spray pyrethroids, but then mix in other things like Coragen, that probably the best time to use that Coragen or Vanacore now is during the pollen shed, and I think because these natural enemies, things like the bees and the minute pirate bugs and lady beetles, they actually initially come to sweet corn to feed on the pollen, and then they're there, and then they'll also feed on corn earworm eggs and things like that. So a good time to have that Coragen or Vanacore is during that pollen shed, because these insecticides are not toxic to those beneficial organisms. So that's been my recommendations, and we've gotten pretty good control in our trials when we've looked at that. So those are all for conventional sweet corn growers. So what if you're an organic grower? What can you use to control corn earworm, which is certainly still a pest for sweet corn growers as well? And these are kind of your four go-to insecticides that organic growers are using quite often. Your pyrethrins, which they're similar to the pyrethroids, but don't stick around as long. Sunlight can break down pyrethroids pretty quickly. Spinosyn and Trust is a naturally occurring product. Neem oil and things like that are azadiractins, and then your BT, which is basically your sprayable BTs. These are all OMRI certified options for organic growers. Now, how well do they work? Well, one thing I can say is that your BT sprays do not control corn earworm anymore. There was a time that they used to, but no longer. We showed you all the data on how the cry proteins are working in the transgenic BT sweet corn. They're not working anymore, and that resistance that's developed to them has caused sprays like Dipel or Zentari to not work anymore against corn earworm. And here's just one trial in 2020 just to confirm that. We basically we got the same % clean ears as we did in the untreated control. So those are not really good options anymore for corn earworm. And I think this slide from my colleague Galen Dively at University of Maryland kind of did a really good evaluation of your azadiractins or your neem oils, Pyganic, and Trust. How do these three perform in sweet corn if an organic grower were to use them? And the data are pretty convincing that Trust is really the only thing that works, and it works quite well. It can provide you really good control. The problem is you are limited on the number of Trust sprays that you can put out per season per crop. So you would maybe be able to get three sprays of Entrust legally, and that's going to be it. So you're going to be limited to Entrust, and you can only put out a few sprays, and then you need to rotate to something else. So I think that's a good update on what we're seeing in sweetcorn control, and I thank you for your time.
Please take a moment to complete the brief survey links below. Your responses will give us a better understanding of how we are doing and how we may better serve your needs in the future. To access the survey, you may scan the QR code on the left using your smartphone's camera or QR code scanning app, or enter the link on the right into your internet browser. Thank you.